The darkness of space stretched endlessly in all directions. Captain Daewon Kim stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge and watched the stars. His ship was small compared to the massive vessels that traveled the galaxy. But it was his ship, his crew, his responsibility. Daewon was a quiet man with steady hands and calm eyes. He had spent 15 years in space, learning every trick that kept people alive far from home. His brown uniform was clean but worn at the edges. He never cared much about appearances. He cared about results. Commander Hana Park worked at the sensor station beside him. She was younger than Daewon by 10 years, but she had the sharpest tactical mind he had ever seen. Her fingers moved across the controls with practiced ease. She studied every reading that came through the ship's systems. The horizon's edge had been exploring the outer rim for 3 months. They were mapping new star systems that no human had ever visited. Earth wanted to know what was out here, what resources existed, what dangers lurked in the dark. So far they had found empty planets and quiet moons. No threats, no trouble. That changed in an instant. Hana's hand stopped moving. Her eyes went wide. She stared at her screen for 3 full seconds before she spoke. "Captain," she said quietly, "we have contacts. 3 ships. Large signatures. They just appeared from hyperspace." Daewon moved to her station. He looked at the screen. 3 massive shapes glowed on the display. Each one was 5 times larger than the horizon's edge. The computer identified them immediately. Velcros Empire warships. The Velcros Empire ruled most of the known galaxy. They had conquered dozens of species over 3,000 years. Their military was legendary. Their ships were powerful. Their leaders were cruel. Every species in the galaxy either served the Empire or feared it. Humans had avoided the Empire so far. Earth was far from Velcro's space. The Empire considered humans too primitive to bother with. They thought human ships were slow and weak. They thought humans were just another minor species that would eventually bow to their power. But now 3 Velcros warships had found a human ship. And they were moving closer. "Battle stations," Daewon said calmly. He pressed a button on his chair. An alarm sounded throughout the ship. It was not loud or panicked, just steady and clear. The crew knew what it meant. Within seconds, every station reported ready. The horizon's edge had only 30 crew members, but each one was trained. Each one was prepared. They had drilled for this moment even though they hoped it would never come. A message came through on the main screen. A Velcros face appeared. The alien had gray skin and 4 eyes. Thick armor covered his chest. Medals decorated his uniform. He looked at Daewon with something between amusement and contempt. "I am Admiral Thex of the Velcros Imperial Fleet," the alien said. His voice was deep and harsh. "You have entered restricted space. Your ship is now property of the Empire. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in your destruction." Daewon looked at the Admiral for a long moment. Then he smiled slightly. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who knew a secret. "Admiral Thex," Daewon replied. "This is not restricted space. These stars belong to no empire. We are a peaceful exploration vessel. We have no interest in conflict. We request safe passage through this system." Admiral Thex laughed. It was a harsh, barking sound. The other Velcros officers on his bridge joined in. They thought it was hilarious that a human would dare to request anything. "You request?" Thex said. "You have no authority to request anything, human. All space is Velcros space. All ships serve the Empire or are destroyed by it. Your species is weak. Your ship is pathetic. You will surrender now or I will turn your vessel into debris." Daewon's smile faded. He leaned forward in his chair. "We will not surrender," he said, "and I suggest you reconsider your actions." Admiral Thex stopped laughing. His 4 eyes narrowed. He had dealt with defiant species before. They always broke. They always surrendered. The humans would be no different. "Very well," Thex said coldly. "You have chosen destruction. All ships, attack formation. Disable their engines first. I want prisoners." The communication ended. The 3 Velcros warships moved into position. They formed a triangle around the horizon's edge. Their weapon ports glowed with charging energy. They were taking their time. They wanted the humans to feel fear. They wanted them to understand how powerless they were. Hana looked at Daewon. Her hands were steady on her controls. "She was ready, Captain?" she asked. Daewon took a deep breath. He thought about Earth. He thought about all the years humans had spent developing their ships in secret. He thought about the weapons and engines that no other species knew existed. The galaxy thought humans were weak. The galaxy was wrong. "Activate combat systems," he said quietly. "Full power to engines. Prepare main cannon." Hana's fingers flew across her station. Lights changed throughout the bridge. The soft hum of the ship's normal operations became a deeper, stronger sound. Power surged through systems that the Velcros could not detect, systems that would shock them. The Velcro ships fired. Dozens of energy blasts crossed the space between them and the horizon's edge. They lit up the darkness like a deadly light show. Admiral Thex watched with satisfaction. The human ship had nowhere to run. It was over. But the human ship did not try to run. Instead, it accelerated forward, straight toward the attacking ships. The horizon's edge moved so fast that the Velcro sensors could barely track it. The ship crossed thousands of kilometers in seconds. It moved at speeds that should have been impossible for a vessel its size. The Velcro's weapons missed completely. Every single shot hit empty space where the ship had been a moment before. On the Velcro's flagship, Admiral Thex gripped his command chair. His eyes went wide. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. He stared at the impossible thing he was seeing. The human ship was not running. It was attacking. The horizon's edge fired a single shot. A beam of pure white energy erupted from the ship's main cannon. It crossed the distance in an instant. It struck the lead Velcros warship directly in the center. The Velcro's shields, which were supposed to be the strongest in the galaxy, shattered like glass. The beam punched through the hull. It cut through every deck. It exited the other side. The massive warship split in half. Internal explosions rippled through both pieces. Then the ship was gone, reduced to floating wreckage. Silence filled the Velcro's flagship bridge. Admiral Thex stared at the debris field that had been his lead ship. His finest vessel. His strongest warriors. Gone in one shot. He looked at his remaining ships. He looked at the human vessel which now floated calmly in space. Waiting. Not pursuing, just waiting. Admiral Thex pressed a button with a shaking hand. He opened a communication channel to his superiors. His voice came out as barely a whisper. "This is Admiral Thex. We have encountered the humans. Send immediate reinforcements. He paused. He could not believe the words he was about to say. "They have ships we cannot fight." The humans were not supposed to have ships like that. The interrogation room was cold and bright. White walls reflected harsh lights from every angle. Captain Bora sat in a metal chair, her hands resting calmly on the table in front of her. She looked relaxed, almost comfortable. This made Commander Tae Young angry. He paced back and forth behind the observation glass. Admiral Daeho stood next to him, watching the human woman carefully. She did not look dangerous. She was small, perhaps 160 centimeters tall. Her uniform was simple gray fabric, worn and patched in several places. But her eyes were sharp and alert. "She's playing games with us," Tae Young said. "Look at her. She is too calm. No fear at all." "This is a trick." Daeho did not respond immediately. He had interrogated many prisoners in his career. He knew fear when he saw it. He also knew confidence. Bora showed confidence, but it was different from arrogance. It was the confidence of someone who had already made their peace with whatever would happen next. "Let me talk to her," Daeho said. "Alone." Tae Young started to protest, but Daeho held up his hand. "That is an order, Commander." Daeho entered the interrogation room and sat down across from Bora. Up close, he could see details he had missed on the monitors. Small scars on her hands, calluses that showed years of physical work, and something else. Her muscles were denser than they should be. Her breathing was controlled and steady, even in this stressful situation. "You are very calm for someone who is a prisoner," Daeho said. Bora smiled slightly. "I am not your prisoner, Admiral. I am your guest. I came here by choice. I will leave by choice when the time is right. You are in the center of the most secure military facility in the Empire. You have no weapons. Your ship is in our holding bay. How exactly will you leave? When you decide to let me go," Bora said simply. "After you understand what is coming. After you realize you need our help." Daeho leaned back in his chair. "Tell me about this threat. These energy signatures we detected. What are they?" Bora's smile faded. Her voice became serious. "They are called the Devourers. That is what humans call them. We do not know their real name. We do not know where they came from originally, but we know what they do. They destroy civilizations. They have done it thousands of times. They move through the galaxy in cycles, taking everything: life, resources, knowledge, everything. The Empire has records going back 10,000 years, Deho said. We have never encountered such a threat. Because the last time they came through this region was 12,000 years ago, before your empire existed, before most current civilizations existed. They destroy everything and then move on to other parts of the galaxy. They feed and grow, then they return on a new cycle. Deho studied her face. She believed what she was saying. That much was clear. How do humans know this? Because we found evidence. When humans first developed space travel, we explored everything. We found dead worlds. Hundreds of them. All destroyed in the same way. All within the same time period. We studied the ruins. We learned the pattern. We realized something had killed all those civilizations and it would come back eventually. So you ran away, Deho said. There was no judgment in his voice, just curiosity. We prepared, Bora corrected him. We did not run. We moved to the edges of the galaxy where the Devourers would arrive first. We built hidden bases. We studied every piece of data we could find about their previous attacks. We learned how they fight, what works against them and what does not. We trained for generations. Every human child is born into this preparation. We are all soldiers now. The door opened suddenly. Dr. Yuna entered carrying a datapad. She was the Empire's top xenologist responsible for studying alien species. She looked excited and frightened at the same time. Admiral, I need to show you this. She held up the datapad. I scanned the prisoner as soon as she arrived. Her biology is remarkable. Her bones are denser than ours. Her muscles have been enhanced through some kind of genetic modification or long-term training program. Her reflexes test at 3 times normal human baseline from old records. Her body can withstand forces that would kill most species in the Empire. Bora nodded slowly. Dr. Yuna is correct. Humans have adapted. We had to. The Devourers are strong and fast. If we wanted to survive close combat with them, we needed to be stronger. So we made ourselves stronger. Every generation we pushed further. Better training, better genetics, better everything. Deho felt a chill run through him. You built yourselves into weapons. We built ourselves into survivors, Bora said. There is a difference. Weapons break. Survivors adapt. Before Deho could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Red lights flashed. Commander Taeyong's voice came through the intercom, tight with panic. Admiral, you need to get to the command center immediately. Our deep space stations are reporting contact. Multiple contacts. The energy signatures are moving faster than predicted. They will reach our outer colonies within days, not weeks. Deho stood up quickly. He looked at Bora. Is this part of your plan? Did you lead them here? Bora's face was grim. No, they were already coming. They always come. We tried to warn you early enough to prepare, but your council leader wanted to arrest us instead of listen. Now you have less time than you thought. Deho ran toward the command center. Dr. Yuna followed him, leaving Bora alone in the interrogation room. The guards outside looked nervous. They had heard the alarms too. In the command center, chaos reigned. Officers shouted at each other. Screens showed data from dozens of monitoring stations. Every screen told the same story. The unknown ships were approaching faster than any known technology should allow. Council leader Myung-hee appeared on the main screen. Her face was tight with stress. What is happening, Admiral? Give me facts, not panic. The signatures we detected are moving toward Imperial space at high speed. Based on current trajectory, they will reach our outer colonies in approximately 5 days. We are scrambling defense fleets to intercept. Can we stop them? Deho hesitated. He looked at the data again. The energy readings were massive, far beyond anything the Empire had faced before. I do not know, leader. I honestly do not know. Then find out. Use any resources you need. I want full mobilization. Every ship. Every weapon. We will show these invaders what the Empire is capable of. The screen went dark. Deho stood in the center of the command center, feeling the weight of 10,000 worlds on his shoulders. Lieutenant Haewon approached him quietly. Sir, what about the human? What about Captain Bora? Should we keep her locked up? Deho thought for a long moment. Everything in his training told him to keep prisoners secured during a crisis. But something else told him that Bora might have answers they desperately needed. Bring her to my office, he said. Under guard, but treat her with respect. I need to know everything she knows about these devourers, and I need to know it now. 20 minutes later, Bora sat in Daeho's private office. 2 guards stood by the door. Daeho poured her a cup of water and sat down across from her. "Tell me how to fight them," he said simply. "No games. No political talk. Just facts. How does humanity fight these things?" Bora took a sip of water. "The first thing you need to understand is that you cannot fight them the way you fight other enemies. Traditional tactics will fail. They have faced thousands of civilizations. They know every standard military strategy. They adapt quickly. If you try to meet them head-on with superior firepower, you will lose. Then how? You fight them the way humans learned to fight. With deception. With guerrilla tactics. With sacrifice when necessary. You make them pay for every meter of space they take. You never give them a fair fight. And most importantly, you never give up. Even when it looks hopeless. Especially when it looks hopeless." Daeho felt his stomach tighten. Everything she described went against imperial military doctrine. The Empire valued honor, clear battles, and decisive victories. What she was describing sounded like chaos. The Empire's military is not trained for that kind of warfare. "I know," Bora said quietly. "That is why we came. We can teach you. But you have to be willing to learn. You have to be willing to set aside pride and tradition. You have to be willing to do whatever it takes to survive." Outside the window, stars shone peacefully in the black of space. But somewhere out there in the dark between those stars, something ancient and terrible was coming. And the Empire had only days to decide if it would listen to the warnings of the humans who had spent generations preparing for this moment. The first colony died in silence. 3 million souls lived on Frontier Station 7. When the Devourers arrived, the station's distress signal lasted exactly 14 seconds. Then nothing. Just empty space where a thriving world had been. Captain Jiwoo received the news while his destroyer patrolled the outer rim. He stared at his display screen, unable to process what he was seeing. An entire colony could not just vanish, but the sensors did not lie. Where Frontier 7 had been, there was now only debris and radiation. "All hands to battle stations," he ordered. His voice remained steady, but his hands gripped the command chair tightly. "Send a priority alert to Fleet Command. We have confirmed hostile contact." The Devourers appeared on his sensors like ghosts materializing from nothing. 5 massive ships, each one larger than any Imperial vessel. Their hulls were dark and seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They moved with impossible grace for their size. Jiwoo had commanded his destroyer for 8 years. He had faced pirates and smugglers. He had trained for every combat scenario in Imperial doctrine. Nothing had prepared him for this. "Fire all weapons," he commanded. "Target the lead ship." Plasma bolts and missiles streaked across space. They hit the enemy ship directly. For a moment, Jiwoo felt hope. Then he watched in horror as the damage simply disappeared. The enemy hull rippled like water, and within seconds it was pristine again. "Impossible," his weapons officer whispered. "Nothing can regenerate that fast." The Devourers returned fire. Their weapons were not plasma or missiles. They fired beams of dark energy that cut through Imperial shields like they were not there. Jiwoo's destroyer shook violently. Alarms screamed. Hull breaches on 6 decks. Power failing. Life support damaged. "Retreat," Jiwoo ordered. "Maximum speed. We need to report what we have seen." His ship limped away, trailing atmosphere and debris. The Devourers did not pursue. They simply moved on to the next target. There were hundreds more colonies to destroy. Back at the capital, Admiral Daeho watched the reports flood in. 3 colonies destroyed in the first day, 7 more under attack. Imperial fleets rushed to intercept, and every single one was being decimated. The Empire's finest ships were being torn apart like paper. Council leader Myung-hee called an emergency session. Her face on the screen showed fear for the first time Daeho could remember. "We need options, Admiral. What can we do?" "Our conventional weapons are useless," Daeho said. The words tasted like poison in his mouth. "The enemy regenerates faster than we can damage them. Our shields cannot stop their weapons. Every engagement has ended in our defeat." "Then what do you suggest? Surrender?" Myung-hee's voice was sharp with anger and fear. "I suggest we listen to Captain Bora. The humans have been preparing for this. They might know tactics that can work." "Absolutely not. I will not hand control of our military to outsiders. The Empire has stood for 10,000 years without help. We will find our own solution." Daeho felt anger rise in his chest. "Leader, we are losing. Today we lost 3 colonies. Tomorrow it will be more. We are facing extinction. Pride will not save us. Myung-hee's face hardened. This discussion is over. Find a solution using Imperial resources. That is an order. The screen went dark. Dae-ho stood alone in his office, feeling hopeless for the first time in his career. Lieutenant Hae-won entered quietly. She had been listening to the entire conversation. Sir, permission to speak freely? Granted. The council leader is wrong. We need the humans. I know it goes against protocol, but I have been talking to Captain Bora. She has been teaching me about their tactics. Sir, they know how to fight these things. They have done it before. Dae-ho looked at the young officer. You have been talking to the prisoner without authorization? Yes, sir. And I would do it again, because I want to survive. I want my family to survive. I want the Empire to survive. And right now, the humans are our only chance. Before Dae-ho could respond, new alerts flooded his screen. Another battle was happening near the outer rim. But this report was different. This fleet was holding its ground. Dae-ho pulled up the tactical display and felt his breath catch. Human ships. Dozens of them. They were fighting alongside Captain Ji-woo's damaged destroyer. But they were not fighting the way Imperial forces fought. They were not forming battle lines or engaging in direct combat. They were swarming, attacking from multiple angles, retreating before the enemy could target them effectively, using hit-and-run tactics that looked like chaos but were clearly coordinated, and it was working. The Devourers were not being destroyed, but they were being slowed, damaged, confused. The human ships were like insects biting a large animal, too small and fast to swat effectively. Dae-ho watched the battle for 20 minutes. The humans lost ships, many ships, but they kept coming. Each time one fell, two more took its place. They showed no fear, no hesitation. They fought with a ferocity that shocked him. Finally, the Devourers withdrew, not because they were defeated, but because the cost of continuing was too high. They moved to an easier target. The human fleet regrouped around Ji-woo's destroyer and sent a message. Imperial vessel, this is Commander Sang-woo of the Human Defense Fleet. We are transmitting repair protocols and tactical data. We strongly suggest you share this with your command. We are all in this fight together, whether your leaders accept it or not. Dae-ho made a decision. It might cost him his career. It might cost him his life. But he could not watch the Empire burn because of political pride. He activated his command channel to all Imperial forces in the outer sectors. This is Admiral Dae-ho. All ships are to coordinate with human forces in your area. Follow their tactical recommendations. This is a direct order from Fleet Command. Commander Tae-young burst into his office moments later. Admiral, you cannot do this without council approval. This is mutiny. Then arrest me, Dae-ho said calmly. But do it after we save the Empire. Right now, those human ships are the only thing standing between us and extinction. I will not let people die because of politics. Tae-young stared at him for a long moment. Then slowly he straightened and saluted. I will not arrest you, sir. I will help you. Because you are right, and because I want to live. Across Imperial space, captains received Dae-ho's order. Some obeyed immediately. Others hesitated. But as they watched human forces fight and saw their tactics work, more and more began to coordinate. They learned to swarm instead of holding formation. They learned to retreat and regroup instead of fighting to the death. They learned to sacrifice pride for survival. In her cell, Captain Bora received word of what was happening. She allowed herself a small smile. The Empire was beginning to understand. They were beginning to adapt. It was not enough yet. Not nearly enough, but it was a start. She pressed a control on the small device hidden in her sleeve. A signal went out across human communication channels. Help was needed. The Empire was finally ready to listen. It was time for humanity to reveal the full extent of their preparation. In the void beyond Imperial space, hidden bases activated. Weapons caches opened. Fleets that had been waiting in silence for generations began to move. Humanity had spent 2,000 years preparing for this war. Now finally, they would show the galaxy what survivors could do when they had enough time to plan. The Devourers had destroyed thousands of civilizations. They had never faced humans. They had never faced a species that spent generations studying their enemies, that built entire cultures around the single purpose of survival, that refused to break no matter what was thrown at them. The war had just begun, and for the first time in 12,000 years, the Devourers were about to learn what it meant to face prey that fought back. The training was brutal, Fleet Captain Jinna watched as her crew struggled through the exercises Major Sang-woo had designed. These were not the clean, organized drills she had learned at the Imperial Academy. These were messy, chaotic, and exhausting. "Again!" Sang-woo shouted. He stood in the center of the training deck, arms crossed. His face showed no sympathy. "You are too slow. In real combat, you would all be dead. The Devourers do not wait for you to form up properly. They strike fast and without mercy. You must be faster!" Gina felt anger rise in her chest. She had commanded her cruiser for 6 years. She had an excellent service record. Now this human was treating her crew like raw recruits. She wanted to argue. But then she remembered the reports. 17 Imperial fleets destroyed, 23 colonies lost. Traditional tactics had failed completely. She swallowed her pride. "You heard him." Reset and run the drill again. Faster this time. Across the Empire, similar scenes played out on hundreds of ships. Human advisors taught Imperial crews to fight in ways that felt wrong. They taught retreat as a valid tactic. They taught deception and ambush. They taught crews to ignore honor and focus only on survival. Many resisted. Captain Kyung-soon led a group of traditionalists who refused to accept human leadership. "We are the Empire," he announced to anyone who would listen. "We do not hide like cowards. We do not run from battle. These humans are corrupting everything we stand for." His ship was destroyed 2 days later. He engaged a Devourer vessel in direct combat, following proper Imperial doctrine. His ship lasted 6 minutes. There were no survivors. After that, resistance to human tactics decreased sharply. Captains who wanted to live began to listen. They learned quickly or they died. Lieutenant Haewon led one of the first mixed crews. Half Imperial, half human. Her mission was to capture a damaged Devourer scout ship. It was a desperate plan. The scout had been separated from the main fleet during a battle. It was wounded but still dangerous. "Remember the plan," Haewon said to her crew. "We hit from 3 angles at once. Overwhelm their targeting systems. Get close enough for boarding. Then we take the ship from the inside." It sounded insane. Boarding a Devourer ship was considered suicide. But the human members of her crew showed no fear. They checked their weapons and armor with calm efficiency. They had done this before. The attack went exactly as planned. 3 small ships struck simultaneously from different vectors. The scout ship tried to target all of them but could not. Its weapons were designed for single targets, not swarms. Haewon's boarding craft attached to the enemy hull with a heavy thud. "Breach," she commanded. The cutting torch burned through the hull in seconds. Human Marines poured through the opening, moving with frightening speed. Haewon followed, her pulse rifle ready. Inside, the ship was dark and hot. The atmosphere was toxic to most species, but their suits protected them. The Devourers defended their ship with savage efficiency. They were large creatures, nearly 3 meters tall, with multiple limbs and natural armor. But the humans fought with a ferocity that matched them. They used explosives in tight corridors. They set traps. They showed no hesitation. Haewon shot a Devourer that came around a corner. It took 5 shots to bring it down. Her hands shook. She had never been this close to the enemy before. Never seen them this clearly. They were terrifying. But the humans around her did not seem afraid. They moved forward steadily, room by room, deck by deck. They had been trained for this. Every child in human society learned to fight these creatures. They knew the weak points, knew the tactics, knew how to win. It took 3 hours to secure the ship. 9 Marines died. 15 were wounded, but they succeeded. For the first time, the Empire had captured a Devourer vessel intact. Admiral Daeho studied the captured ship personally. Imperial scientists swarmed over every system trying to understand the technology. What they found was both fascinating and terrifying. The Devourers used biological components in their ships. Their vessels could heal because they were partially alive. Their weapons drew power from some kind of dark matter reactor that defied Imperial physics. But there were weaknesses. The biological components needed specific nutrients. The regeneration could be overwhelmed with enough sustained damage. The dark matter reactors had a limited range before they needed to recharge. "We can use this," Dr. Yuna said excitedly. "If we know their weaknesses, we can design better weapons, better tactics." Captain Bora was released from custody and brought to the research facility. She walked through the captured ship with a grim expression. "You are learning," she said to Daeho. "This is good, but you need to understand something. The Devourers learn too. They will adapt to your new tactics just as they adapted to everyone else's. You cannot rely on one approach. You must constantly change, constantly evolve. That is how humans have survived. How many different strategies do you have? Tejo asked. Bora smiled slightly. Thousands. We have been preparing for 2,000 years. Every generation adds new ideas, new weapons, new tactics. We assumed from the beginning that we would face an enemy that could adapt, so we made sure we could adapt faster. Council leader Myung-hee finally visited the front lines. She had refused to accept the reality of the situation until now. But the numbers were undeniable. The Empire had lost 30% of its territory. 40 billion citizens were dead or missing. If the war continued at this rate, the Empire would fall within months. She met with Daiho in his command center. Her face looked older, worn down by stress and fear. I was wrong, she said quietly. I thought we could handle this ourselves. I thought asking for help was weakness. I nearly destroyed us all with my pride. Daiho said nothing. There was nothing to say. They both knew the truth. What do we need to do? Myung-hee asked. Tell me honestly, what will it take to survive? Full integration with human forces, Daiho said. Shared command structure. Combined fleets. Complete access to their bases and supply networks. And most importantly, we need to accept that the Empire will never be the same. We are no longer the dominant power. We are partners now, equals with the humans. Myung-hee closed her eyes. Everything she had worked for, everything the Empire represented was being dismantled. But she was not a fool. Pride was worthless if everyone was dead. Do it, she said. Whatever it takes. I will announce the formal alliance tomorrow. The Empire will fight alongside humanity as equals. The announcement sent shockwaves through Imperial society. Some celebrated, others protested, but most people simply felt relief. They had been losing. Now at least they had a chance. Fleet Captain Jinnah stood on her bridge 3 weeks after the alliance was announced. Her crew had changed. They moved differently now, thought differently. They had learned to fight like humans, and in doing so, they had become more than they were before. Major Sang-woo had become her second in command. She trusted him completely now. He had saved her ship twice in the last week alone. His tactics were unconventional, but they worked. New contacts on sensors, her tactical officer reported. Devourer fleet, moving toward the Sigma sector. Jinnah did not feel fear anymore. She felt something else, something that surprised her. Confidence. Not because she thought winning was certain, but because she knew how to fight now. She knew how to survive. All ships, this is Jinnah. Form up on my position. We are going to show these things what happens when humans and the Empire fight together. We are going to show them what survivors can do. Her fleet moved into position. Imperial ships and human ships fighting as one force. The formation looked chaotic to traditional eyes, but it was deadly efficient. They had learned from the best teachers possible. They had learned from a species that refused to die. The battle that followed was fierce and costly, but for the first time since the war began, an Imperial fleet did not just survive. It won. The Devourer fleet retreated, damaged and confused. They had faced something they did not expect. Prey that had become predators. News of the victory spread quickly. Across the Empire, hope began to replace despair. They could win this war. It would be hard. It would be bloody, but they could win. In her quarters, Captain Bora received a coded message from Human High Command. The final phase was about to begin. The Empire had learned to survive. Now it was time to show them how to truly fight back. How to take the war to the enemy. How to make the Devourers regret ever coming to this galaxy. Intelligence reports confirmed what everyone feared. The main Devourer fleet was coming to the Imperial capital. 300 massive ships, more than had been seen in all previous battles combined. They were moving slowly, carefully, gathering strength for one final crushing blow. Admiral Daiho stood in the war room, surrounded by holographic displays showing the approaching threat. Council leader Myung-hee stood beside him, her face pale but determined. Captain Bora studied the displays with cold calculation. We cannot win a direct battle, Daiho said. Even with our combined forces, we are outnumbered 5-1. They will destroy us. Then we do not fight a direct battle, Bora said calmly. She gestured at the display. We evacuate the capital. We make them think they have won. Then we destroy them when they are vulnerable. The room went silent. Evacuate the capital? The heart of the Empire? The symbol of 10,000 years of civilization? It was unthinkable. Myung-hee spoke slowly. Explain your plan. Bora activated a different display. The Devourers are predictable in one way. When they take a major target, they establish themselves immediately. They begin extracting resources and converting infrastructure. This process takes time and requires them to lower their defenses. That is when we strike. You want to give them our capital, Myung-hee said. You want to hand them the throne of the Empire. A throne is just a chair, Bora replied. What matters is the people. We evacuate everyone, every citizen, every soldier, every ship that can fly. We leave behind a trap, mines in every sector, hidden weapons in every station. Then we wait in concealment. When they think they are safe, we return with everything we have. Daeho saw the logic, but his heart rebelled against it. The capital has stood for 10,000 years. To abandon it, to save it, Bora finished. Buildings can be rebuilt. Cities can be restored. But if everyone dies defending symbols, there will be no one left to remember what those symbols meant. Myung-hee closed her eyes. She had led the Empire through peace and prosperity. Now she had to lead it through the hardest decision in its history. When she opened her eyes again, they were clear and resolved. Begin the evacuation. We have 4 days before they arrive. Move everyone to the secondary systems. Tell the people the truth. Tell them we are retreating to win. The evacuation was the largest operation in Imperial history. 40 billion people lived in the capital system. Moving them all seemed impossible. But desperation made the impossible happen. Every ship that could fly was pressed into service. Passenger liners, cargo haulers, even private yachts. They all carried refugees away from the capital. Lieutenant Haewon commanded one of the evacuation convoys. She watched families board her ship with whatever possessions they could carry. Children cried. Adults looked lost and afraid. But they boarded. They trusted that their leaders had a plan. Will we really win? A young boy asked her as he boarded. Will we come back home? Haewon knelt down to his level. Yes, she said firmly. We will win. And you will come home. I promise. She hoped it was not a lie. While civilians evacuated, military forces prepared the trap. Major Sang-woo led teams planting mines throughout the system. Thousands of them. Each one carefully hidden and programmed to activate on a specific signal. They turned the capital system into a massive weapon. Fleet Captain Jinna positioned her forces in the outer dark, beyond sensor range. Hundreds of ships, both Imperial and human, waiting in silence. They powered down to minimal systems to avoid detection. Inside those ships, crews waited nervously. Hours passed, then days. The Devourer fleet arrived exactly on schedule. 300 massive ships emerged from faster-than-light travel and swept into the capital system. They found it empty. No defending fleets, no resistance. Just silent cities and abandoned stations. Admiral Daeho watched from his hidden command ship. His sensors showed the enemy moving confidently through the system, claiming it for themselves. They believed they had won. The Empire had fled. The capital was theirs. They are beginning extraction operations, Captain Bora reported. She sat at the tactical station next to him. They are lowering shields to deploy harvesting equipment. This is the moment. Daeho took a deep breath. This was it. Either they won here or the Empire ended. All forces, this is Admiral Daeho. Execute the attack. Show them what happens when they threaten our home. Thousands of mines detonated simultaneously. The capital system lit up like a sun. Devourer ships caught with lowered shields took devastating damage. Explosions rippled through their fleet. Before they could react, the hidden forces struck. Imperial and human ships poured out of hiding from every direction. They did not form lines or engage in traditional combat. They swarmed. They attacked from above and below, from every angle at once. They targeted damaged ships, overwhelming them before moving to the next target. Jinna led her squadron in a diving attack on a Devourer command ship. Her weapons carved through its damaged hull. Around her, dozens of other ships did the same. The Devourers tried to respond, but they were confused and disorganized. They had expected an easy victory, not a coordinated ambush. Lieutenant Haewon commanded a boarding team on the largest Devourer vessel. They fought their way through corridors filled with smoke and death. The enemy fought desperately now, no longer confident. Major Sang-woo led the assault, his team moving with the practiced efficiency of veterans. Reactor room ahead, Sang-woo shouted over the sound of weapons fire. Plant the charges. We have 3 minutes. Haywan and her team rushed forward. They fought past the last defenders and reached the massive dark matter reactor at the ship's core. They placed explosive charges at key points. The timer started counting down. Retreat, Sang-woo ordered. Everyone out now, they ran. Behind them, the reactor began to overload. They reached their boarding craft with 30 seconds to spare. As their ship pulled away, the Devourer vessel exploded. The blast took out 3 more enemy ships that had been nearby. The battle raged for 6 hours. It was vicious and brutal. Both sides took terrible losses. Ships burned in the void. Thousands died. But slowly, inevitably, the Devourers began to lose. They had never faced an enemy like this. An enemy that used deception and sacrifice. An enemy that refused to break no matter how hard they were hit. Finally, the remaining Devourer ships retreated. Not in organized fashion, but in panic. They fled the system, leaving behind their dead and damaged. For the first time in 12,000 years, they had been defeated. Admiral Daeho stood on the bridge of his flagship looking at the devastation. The capital system was in ruins. Beautiful cities were damaged or destroyed. Stations floated as wreckage. But they had won. The Empire survived. Captain Bora joined him at the viewport. This was only the first wave, she said quietly. More will come. But now you know you can fight them. Now you know you can win. At what cost? Daeho asked. We lost 50,000 ships. 1 million soldiers. Our capital is destroyed. The cost of survival, Bora replied. It is always high. But you paid it. You are still here. Your people are still alive. You can rebuild. That is what matters. 3 months later, Council Leader Myung-hee stepped down. She nominated Admiral Daeho to take her place. The Council approved unanimously. He became the new leader of a changed empire. His first act was to formally recognize the alliance with humanity. Not as a temporary partnership, but as a permanent union. 2 species, fighting together, surviving together. Captain Bora became his chief military advisor. Together they began restructuring the Empire's defenses. Human bases throughout the galaxy opened to Imperial forces. Shared technology programs began. Training academies taught both species together. The old Empire died in the battle for the capital. A new one was born from its ashes. Lieutenant Haywan, now Captain Haywan, stood on the observation deck of a newly rebuilt station. She watched construction crews working on damaged sectors. The capital was slowly coming back to life. It would never be exactly as it was. But perhaps that was good. Perhaps change was necessary. Captain Bora joined her, carrying 2 cups of hot tea. She handed one to Haywan and stood beside her. Do you think more of them will come? Haywan asked. Yes, Bora said. They always do. This is their nature. They consume and destroy. But now you know how to fight them. Now you know how to survive. How did humans prepare for this for so long? How did you know what was coming? Bora was quiet for a moment. Because we know what it means to be prey. Humans were not always strong. For most of our history, we were hunted by predators stronger and faster than us. We survived by being smart, by working together, by refusing to give up. When we reached the stars and found evidence of the Devourers, we recognized them immediately. They were just another predator, and we have been running from predators since we lived in caves. But you stopped running, Haywan said. No, Bora replied with a slight smile. We never stopped running. We just learned to run toward the danger instead of away from it. We learned that sometimes the only way to stop being prey is to become something the predators fear. We became survivors, and now, so have you. They stood together in silence, watching the work crews rebuild civilization. The war was not over. More battles would come. But the Empire had learned the most important lesson. Survival was not about strength or honor or tradition. It was about adaptation.